I'm going to be honest, this wasn't the next video I was expecting to make at all, but it turns out there's another anniversary today. It's the 110th anniversary of a character I hold very near to me, so I'm going to talk about her now, and nobody's going to stop me. I'm talking about Gertie the Dinosaur. You may think that name sounds familiar, because I actually did mention her briefly in the last video where I was discussing Disney's 100th. I want to dig into her story a bit more today because I find it pretty fascinating. That, and I want other people to know who this is because I love her. The year is 1914. Hand-drawn animation is still a new and novel concept, and one of the people charging the lead on this new frontier is Winsor McCay. He had already produced two animated short films by now, 1911's Winsor McCay, the famous cartoonist of the New York Herald and his moving comics, or Little Nemo for short, and 1912's How a Mosquito Operates. Both of these films were technically impressive for the time, but there was something missing from them, which was characters. Well, yes, by definition, there are living people and animals in these two shorts. I struggle to call them characters. For example, the clowns in Little Nemo possessed little to no individuality and only served as props for gags, and the mosquito and How a Mosquito Operates never really emotes or displays any personality. These weren't stories with characters per se, they were just trick films and a series of gags. This may be something Winsor McCay had felt as well, because for his next short, he decided the star would be a named character. Someone who had emotions and thoughts of their own, separate from the punchline of a joke. He decided the character would be a dinosaur, and after hearing a similar sounding name from a passing conversation, named the dinosaur Gertie. Gertie debuted to the public exactly 110 years ago today in a vaudeville performance. While we unfortunately don't have any footage of this performance version, we're not out of luck yet. Later that year, a theatrical version was released, which we do have in full. This is the version of Gertie's story I'll be sharing, mainly because it's the one that survives. And the current fate of the vaudeville act is a whole can of worms worthy of a video on its own, honestly. The short opens at the Museum of Natural History in New York. Winsor McCay, accompanied by fellow creators George McManus and Roy McArdle, come across a dinosaur skeleton 20 feet tall and 70 feet long. McCay makes a bet with McManus that he can make the dinosaur come to life again through the power of animation. 6 months pass and McCay is done with his dinosaur cartoon. McManus takes a brief visit to check on McCay's progress, and McCay gives him a brief demonstration on how the animation will work, noting that he has drawn 10,000 pictures over the last 6 months to win this bet. By the way, if I didn't mention this, the stakes on this bet are a free dinner. McCay drew 10,000 drawings over the course of 6 months for one dinner. Personally, if this were me, I would want this to be the best dinner I've ever tasted, and then some would be worth 6 months of work. Anyway, we cut to a dinner party where McCay is finally able to show off his hard work and win his meal. He starts by drawing the dinosaur a single time. After being called out that the bet was to make it move, McCay obliges and reveals the animation, claiming that the dinosaur named Gertie will follow his commands as he instructs her. What follows is the animation from the original vaudeville act Gertie the Dinosaur, with dialogue cards injected where a live performer acting as McCay would have spoken. McCay's claims that Gertie will follow his commands is inconsistent. Gertie's behavior doesn't follow McCay's orders all the way, and instead she acts somewhat like a puppy who has most of her training done, but not quite enough to register exactly when to do a trick. There are times where it takes her a few seconds to register she has to do something, and other times where she's distracted by something else happening. She's very curious about the world around her, but her sheer size isn't forgotten. A pumpkin is a kibble bite to her. She can eat an entire tree in a few swift gulps, and she can drink a whole lake in a matter of seconds. She can toss Jumbo the mammoth by the tail with ease. She's a friendly yet powerful dinosaur, and I for one love her for it. The animated segment ends with an animated McCay entering the mouth of Gertie and having her carry him off screen to prove that she's not scared of McCay. After the end of this segment, we briefly cut back to live action to show the bet being settled. McManus would pay for the dinner party instead of McCay. And that's the film. In terms of recontextualizing the vaudeville footage into theatrical film, I think it does a decent job. I think the stakes of the bet are a bit silly, but then again, Gertie was never something to be taken too seriously. Other than that, the vaudeville performance was really unique for the time, so it's hard for me to think of any other context that would fit for this transition to a theatrical production. It works, and I can't really ask for much more than that. Gertie was a success. Critics and audiences alike loved her both in vaudeville and in theaters. So what was next for our lovable dinosaur friend? Well, nothing. Okay, well that's not completely true, but strangely enough, Gertie's career as Winsor McCay's character started and ended with the short. She had a sequel planned, but it was eventually abandoned, and all we have to show for it is roughly 2 minutes of animation and some concept sketches. After Winsor McCay unfortunately passed in the 1930s, his son Robert McCay tried to give Gertie a revival via a comic strip called Dino, though unfortunately this wasn't successful. But not all is lost, though. Gertie had inspired a certain man to join the field, being Walt Disney. Walt had an immense amount of respect for Winsor McCay's work, Gertie especially. It was to the point where Walt reportedly once sat down Robert McCay and, referring to the Walt Disney Animation Studio, said that it should be Robert's father's. Disney and his company would find a few ways to ensure Gertie would live on. Not only did Disney recreate the vaudeville performance of Gertie the Dinosaur for the Disneyland TV show, but they made an ice cream stand in Hollywood studios in her name and likeness so she could continue living in Disney's parks. And it's still around today. You can go visit her whenever you like. It's so strange to me that between Gertie being such a unique piece for her time, being an inspiration to Walt Disney of all people, and generally just being enjoyable on top of all that, she's relatively unknown today. The ice cream stand helps, of course, but I for one would hate to see such an impactful dinosaur go extinct. That's why I'm gonna end this video real quick with a call to action. It's Gertie's 110th today. She's in public domain. Make something for her. I'm sure she'd enjoy pleasing audiences like she used to. This isn't an empty call either, no. I have some content featuring Gertie in my own pipeline. That comes in time, though. In honor of her birthday, I wanted to get the message out, and hopefully this dino will get to live to please many more lives in the future.